Welcome to the channel.
I don't even know how to start this. I guess no one really does when their whole world crashes down around them. You never think it'll happen to you, right? You see those stories online, shake your head, maybe feel bad for the guy, and then move on with your life. But then one day, it's your life that's falling apart. And there's nothing you can do to stop it. It all started with a stupid question. One of those thoughts that creeps into your head at the worst time, and once it's there, it won't leave you alone. Why does she look nothing like me? My wife, Jessica, and I had been married for almost 7 years. We had what I thought was a great life. I had a stable job as a freelance writer, she worked in marketing, and together, we had our little girl, Emma. Emma was 5, full of energy, and the absolute light of my life. Or at least, that's what I thought. Looking back, I should have noticed the signs earlier. The late nights, the sudden interest in girls' trips, the way her phone was always face down. But I was in love. I trusted her. That's what marriage is supposed to be built on, right? Then came that question. One evening, we were at my parents' house for dinner. My mom was playing with Emma, brushing her hair, and she made an offhand comment. Something like, "She's got such straight hair, not a curl in sight." Funny, because you had the curliest little head when you were her age. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't anything, really. Just a grandma noticing her granddaughter's hair. But it stuck. I found myself staring at Emma that night while she slept. Blonde hair, brown eyes, delicate features. Jessica was blonde, yeah, but I had dark hair. My whole family had dark hair. And brown eyes? That didn't make sense either. I remembered reading something about genetics in high school, dominant and recessive traits or something. My gut twisted. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I wanted to believe that. But the thought wouldn't let go. That's when I started noticing other things. Small things. Things I had ignored before. Like how Jessica used to joke about how fast Emma came after we got married. Like how she had reconnected with an old college friend, Matt, right around that time. How Matt had also suddenly moved across the country and disappeared from her social media a few months after Emma was born. The next night, after Jessica fell asleep, I did something I never thought I'd do. I took her phone. She had a password, but I knew it, our anniversary. She'd always said she had nothing to hide. She had everything to hide. The messages were still there. Years of them. Buried under archived chats. Some were innocent, just old friends catching up. But the more I scrolled, the worse they got. Flirty texts, late-night confessions, hidden meetups. And then, the one that broke me. A message from Matt, sent 6 years ago. "Are you sure it's his?" Jessica's response? "It doesn't matter. He'll be a great dad either way." I don't remember much after that. I think I just sat there, staring at the screen, rereading the words over and over. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would explode. My hands were shaking. My stomach felt like it had been ripped open. She knew. She had known this whole time. And she let me raise a child that wasn't mine without even telling me. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment my marriage ended, even if I didn't say it out loud yet. And that was just the beginning. That I don't know how long I sat there staring at that message. Minutes? Hours? Time didn't feel real. My mind was racing, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear my own thoughts. I should have confronted her right then. I should have shaken her awake, shoved the phone in her face, and demanded the truth. But I didn't. Instead, I just sat there, feeling like my entire life had been rewritten in one sentence. "Are you sure it's his?" "It doesn't matter. He'll be a great dad either way." It took everything in me not to throw her phone across the room. I needed proof. Real proof. Something undeniable. Because if I confronted her now, she'd just lie. She was good at lying, I knew that now. So I made a plan. The next morning, I acted normal. Forced myself to smile. Forced myself to kiss her goodbye before she left for work. I don't know how I did it, but I did. I told her I was going to take Emma to the park since I had a light workday. She smiled like nothing was wrong. But I wasn't taking Emma to the park. I was taking her to a DNA testing lab. I felt like the worst person on earth when she held my hand in the car, swinging our arms back and forth like she always did. She was happy. She was innocent. She trusted me. And here I was, about to rip her whole world apart. The test was simple. A quick swab of her cheek. She giggled the whole time, thinking it was some kind of silly game. I forced a smile, told her we were playing detective. The lady at the clinic said I'd get results in a few days. Those were the longest days of my life. Jessica didn't suspect a thing. She went about life as usual, kissing me goodnight, laughing at stupid TV shows, talking about planning a family trip. And all I could do was watch her, wondering how she could live with herself. How she could look me in the eyes every day knowing what she had done. Then, the email came. I'll never forget the moment I opened it. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. My vision blurred. I had to reread it 3 times before it sank in. Probability of paternity, 0%. 0. Not even a chance. Emma wasn't mine. My hands went numb. My whole body felt ice cold. I thought I might throw up. And then, the anger hit. It wasn't just the cheating. It wasn't just the lying. It was the fact that she had let me believe, for 5 whole years, that Emma was my daughter. She had stolen those years from me. Stolen my right to know the truth. I saw red. Jessica got home late that night. Some work event. Yeah, right. She barely got through the door before I slammed the printed DNA results on the counter. Explain this, I said. She blinked at the paper, confused at first. Then she read it. And her face went pale. Jessica just stood there, frozen. She didn't even try to grab the paper. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something, but no words came out. I gave her a chance. 10 full seconds of silence. 10 seconds for her to admit what she did, to tell me the truth. But she didn't. Instead, she did exactly what I expected her to do. She lied. What is this? She stammered, looking up at me with wide eyes, playing innocent. You tell me, I said, voice shaking with anger. That's a DNA test. The kind that tells you if someone is a child's biological father. You know what it says, Jessica? It says there's a 0% chance that Emma is mine. I saw the panic in her eyes, the way her breathing changed. But she still tried to act confused. That can't be right, she said, shaking her head. There must be a mistake. Maybe they mixed up the samples or something. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Oh yeah. A mistake? That's what you're going with? She grabbed the paper like she was actually going to analyze it, like she was going to find some typo that would magically make it all go away. Maybe we should get another test, she mumbled. This doesn't make sense. Jessica, I said, stepping closer. Stop lying. Her eyes flicked up to mine, and for the first time, I saw something crack in her expression. I saw the messages, I said. Between you and Matt. From 6 years ago. Are you sure it's his? It doesn't matter. He'll be a great dad either way. That was it. That was the moment the mask slipped. Her whole body stiffened, and her breathing went shallow. For a second, I thought she might actually try to deny that too, but she didn't. Instead, she did something worse. She changed the story. Okay, she whispered, staring at the floor. Okay. I'll tell you the truth. I folded my arms. Yeah. I'd love to hear it. She took a shaky breath, then looked up at me with tears in her eyes. The kind of tears that used to make me feel bad for her. The kind that used to make me want to fix whatever was wrong. But not this time. It was only one time, she said, voice breaking. It was a mistake. I was drunk, and I wasn't thinking. It didn't mean anything. I swear, I thought she was yours. I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth might crack. You thought she was mine? She nodded desperately. Yes. I mean, I wasn't sure, but I hoped. You hoped? I cut her off. You hoped I was the father? So what, you just gambled with my life. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I didn't know what else to do. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you. I stepped back, shaking my head. So instead of telling me the truth, you let me raise a child that isn't mine. You let me believe. My voice caught in my throat. I had to swallow hard just to keep speaking. You let me fall in love with her, Jessica. You let me think she was my daughter. She let out a sob, covering her face with her hands. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I didn't care. I was beyond sorry. I was furious. So you slept with Matt while we were engaged, I said, my voice eerily calm now. And you didn't even bother to tell him he had a daughter, did you? She hesitated. And that was all the answer I needed. I laughed bitterly, rubbing a hand over my face. Of course you didn't. Why would you? That would mean facing consequences. She wiped her tears and looked up at me, desperation in her eyes. But you raised her, she cried. You're the only father she's ever known. DNA doesn't change that. Yes, it does, I snapped. You took away my choice, Jessica. You never gave me a chance to decide if I wanted to stay after you cheated. You made that decision for me. And now you expect me to just accept it. She loves you, she whispered. Those words felt like a knife to the chest. Because the worst part? She was right. Emma did love me. And I loved her. But love didn't change the fact that my whole marriage was built on a lie. Jessica stepped closer, reaching for my arm. Please, she begged. We can fix this. We can go to therapy, we can. I jerked away from her touch. No, I said firmly. We can't fix this. Her face crumpled. So, what? You're just going to leave. You're going to abandon Emma. I exhaled slowly, forcing down the lump in my throat. I need time to think, I said, turning toward the door. But I can tell you one thing, this marriage? It's over. I walked out before she could say another word. And for the first time in years, I had no idea what was going to happen next. I didn't go back that night. I couldn't. I drove aimlessly for hours, hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My mind was racing, but at the same time, it was completely blank. What the hell was I supposed to do now? Jessica was right about one thing, I loved Emma. I loved her more than anything. And now, I had to figure out what that even meant when she wasn't biologically mine. I ended up at my brother's house. When he opened the door, I must have looked like hell because his face instantly dropped. Man, what happened? He asked. I just shook my head and stepped inside. Jessica cheated. Emma's not mine. His whole body tensed. You're kidding. I laughed bitterly. Wish I was. He led me to the kitchen, handed me a beer, and let me talk. I told him everything, the DNA test, the messages, the confrontation. He just sat there, jaw clenched, listening. Finally, he let out a long breath and shook his head. Damn, man. I don't even know what to say. Yeah, I muttered, staring at the table. Me neither. We sat in silence for a while before he asked, what about Emma? That was the question, wasn't it? What about Emma? I rubbed a hand over my face. I don't know. I don't want to abandon her, but how do I even? I stopped, shaking my head. It's not fair. None of this is fair. He nodded. You need time. You don't have to figure everything out tonight. He was right. But that didn't make it any easier. Jessica's breakdown. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of texts from Jessica. Jessica, please come home. We need to talk. Jessica, I know you're hurting, but we can fix this. Jessica, Emma keeps asking where you are. I don't know what to tell her. Jessica, please, just come back. I stared at my phone, feeling nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just empty. Then, a voicemail came through. I hesitated before pressing play. The moment I did, I regretted it. Jessica was hysterical. She was sobbing so hard she could barely get words out. Please, please come home, she begged between gasps. I messed up, I know I did. But don't do this to Emma. Don't just disappear. I swallowed hard. I hated her. I really did. But hearing her like that, it still hit me. Not because I cared about her. But because, despite everything, Emma was still in that house. And she didn't deserve this. I shut my eyes, took a deep breath, and finally texted back. I'll come by later to see Emma. But we are not fixing this. Jessica's response was immediate. Jessica, okay. I'll be here. Please, just come home. Facing Emma. When I pulled into the driveway, my heart was pounding. I sat there for a full minute, gripping the steering wheel, before I finally got out. Jessica opened the door before I could even knock. Her eyes were red and puffy, hair a mess. She looked like she hadn't slept at all. I didn't say anything to her. Just pushed past and walked into the living room. Emma was sitting on the couch, hugging one of her stuffed animals. The second she saw me, her face lit up. Daddy, she squealed, jumping up and running to me. I caught her in my arms, hugging her tight. And that was when it hit me. None of this was her fault. She was innocent in all of this. She didn't lie to me. She didn't betray me. She was just a little girl who loved her dad. I felt my throat tighten. I had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew one thing: I couldn't just walk away from her. Not yet. Holding Emma in my arms, feeling her tiny hands gripping my shirt, I realized something: this little girl still felt like my daughter. It didn't matter what a DNA test said. 5 years of bedtime stories, scraped knees, school drop-offs, and I love yous didn't just disappear overnight. But knowing that didn't make anything easier. I pulled back and smiled at her, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, kiddo. How was your day? She pouted. Bad. Mommy was crying, and you weren't home. I felt Jessica's eyes on me from across the room, but I didn't look at her. Emma buried her face in my chest. Are you mad at me? My heart shattered. I glanced up at Jessica, and for the first time since I found out the truth, I saw real fear in her face. She knew how much power I had in this moment. I bent down so I was at Emma's level. Never, sweetheart. I could never be mad at you. She nodded, but she didn't look convinced. Jessica cleared her throat. Maybe we should all sit down and... I cut her off. Emma, why don't you go get your coloring book? We can draw together. Her face brightened instantly. Okay. She ran off down the hall, leaving Jessica and me alone. The moment Emma was out of earshot, Jessica grabbed my arm. Please, she whispered, don't do this. I yanked my arm away. Don't do what, Jessica? React to the fact that you lied to me for 5 years? She swallowed hard, her lip trembling. I know I messed up, but you can't just leave. Emma needs you. I let out a bitter laugh. Funny how you're only thinking about Emma now. Where was this concern when you decided to gamble on who her real father was? Jessica flinched. I was scared. No, I snapped. You were selfish. Her eyes welled up with tears. I love you. I shook my head. No, you don't. You love what I gave you, a stable life, a good husband, a father for your kid. You don't love me, Jessica. Because if you did, you wouldn't have done this. She reached for me again, but I stepped back. You said you thought Emma was mine, I said coldly. So tell me the truth. Did you really think that, or did you just hope I'd never find out? She didn't answer. That was all I needed to know. I exhaled, trying to stay calm. I don't know what happens next. I need time to think. But I do know one thing, this marriage is over. Jessica gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. No, please, don't. I cut her off. I'll figure out what to do about Emma. But we're done. And with that, I walked away. I didn't have all the answers yet. But for the first time in days, I finally felt in control that I left without looking back. If I had, I might have seen Jessica collapse onto the couch in tears. But I didn't care. She wasn't my problem anymore. I drove straight to my brother's place again. The second he opened the door and saw my face, he just stepped aside and let me in. No questions, no pity. Just a cold beer and a quiet place to sit. After a few minutes, he finally spoke. So, what now? I stared at the label on my bottle, picking at the edge. I don't know. You gonna fight for custody? Custody. The word made my stomach turn. Could I even do that? Legally, I wasn't Emma's father. But emotionally? I was the only father she knew. Did I walk away? Did I fight to stay in her life? I had no idea what the right choice was. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Mom, call me. Now. Crap. I sighed, running a hand over my face. She knows. My brother frowned. You tell her? I shook my head. No. But Jessica might have. I stepped outside and called her back. She picked up on the first ring. Why didn't you tell me? Mom snapped before I could even say hello. I exhaled slowly. Because I was still processing it. Processing? She practically yelled. Your wife cheats on you, lies for years, and you're just quietly processing. Mom, And Emma, she cut me off. Her voice broke a little. Oh, honey, what happens to Emma? I closed my eyes. I don't know. Silence. Then, softly, she asked, Are you going to leave her? I hesitated. I don't want to. But I don't even know if I can legally stay in her life. Mom was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, she sounded tired. You're a good man, sweetheart. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But I hate that this is happening to you. Yeah, I muttered. Me too. We hung up, and I just stood there, staring at my phone. And that's when I saw another message. Unknown number, call me. It's important. I frowned. The area code looked familiar. I clicked on the contact info. It was Matt. Emma's real father. Meeting the other man. My stomach twisted, but my hands moved on their own. Before I could stop myself, I hit call. It rang twice before he picked up. Hey, he said, voice cautious. I wasn't sure if you'd actually call. How did you get my number? I asked, my voice tight. He sighed. Jessica gave it to me. Said I should talk to you. I clenched my jaw. Why? A pause. Then, because I just found out about Emma, and I think you and I need to have a conversation. I gripped the phone tighter. You just found out? Yeah, he admitted. Jessica never told me. Not once. If I had known. He trailed off. I didn't believe him. Not entirely. But I needed answers. Fine, I said. Let's talk. Name the place, he said. And just like that, I was about to meet the man who ruined my life. I picked a diner on the edge of town. Neutral ground. Somewhere I wouldn't lose my mind and throw a punch the second I saw him. When I walked in, I spotted him immediately. Matt was sitting in a booth near the back, fidgeting with his coffee cup. He looked up when the door jingled, and his eyes locked onto mine. For a second, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, I walked over and sat down across from him. "Thanks for meeting me," he said. I didn't answer. Just folded my arms and stared at him. He shifted uncomfortably. "Look, man, Cut the crap," I said flatly. "I'm not here for small talk. You said you just found out about Emma. Start there." He exhaled, rubbing a hand over his face. "Jessica called me a few days ago. She was a mess. She told me everything. About how she wasn't sure, about the test, about how you found out." I clenched my fists. "So, let me get this straight, you had no idea she could be yours? Ever?" He shook his head. "Not really. I mean, yeah, we hooked up back then, but she told me she was on birth control. And when she got married and had a kid, I just assumed." I slammed my hand on the table, making him flinch. "You assumed?" He looked guilty. "Yeah. I assumed because Jessica never said a damn thing to me." I leaned back, studying him. He seemed sincere. But I didn't trust a word out of his mouth. "So, what now?" I asked. Matt swallowed hard. "I don't know." He looked down at his coffee. "I mean, I just found out I have a daughter. And you've been her dad this whole time." Something about the way he said that made my blood boil. I leaned in. "No. Not this whole time. Since the day she was born. Since the moment I held her in my arms at the hospital. Since her first steps, her first words, her nightmares, her scraped knees. That's being a dad." Matt looked down. "I get it." "No, you don't," I snapped. "You have no idea what this feels like. You got to live your life, completely free, while I built mine around a lie." He nodded, staring at his hands. "You're right. I don't know what that's like. But I want to do the right thing now." I narrowed my eyes. "And what does that mean?" He hesitated. I want to be in her life." My stomach dropped. "Are you serious?" I hissed. He nodded. "I know I don't have any right to demand anything. But she is my daughter. And I can't just ignore that." My hands were shaking under the table. I clenched them into fists, trying to stay calm. "And what about me?" I asked. "What happens to me in all this?" Matt looked genuinely pained. "I don't know, man. I don't have the answers. But I know I want to be there for her." I stared at him, my mind spinning. This was it. The moment I realized my life wasn't just falling apart, it was about to get even worse. Because now, I wasn't just dealing with Jessica's betrayal. Now, I had to face the fact that I might lose Emma forever. I sat there, gripping the edge of the table so hard I thought it might snap in half. My mind was screaming, my pulse pounding in my ears. Matt just sat across from me, looking uncomfortable as hell. Good. He should feel uncomfortable. He should feel worse. "You want to be in her life," I repeated, my voice eerily calm. Matt nodded. "I do." I exhaled slowly, trying to keep myself from lunging across the table. "And what if I say no?" His jaw tightened. "I'd rather not fight about this. But if I have to, I will." I let out a bitter laugh. "Unbelievable. I've raised her for 5 years, you just found out she even exists, and now you're talking about fighting for her? He looked genuinely guilty. I know this isn't fair. I know I don't deserve a say after all this time. But she is my daughter. I can't ignore that. I leaned in, my voice low and cold. And what about what she deserves, huh? She deserves stability. She deserves the truth. You showing up now doesn't fix anything. It just rips her world apart. Matt swallowed hard. I don't want to hurt her. But I can't pretend she doesn't exist. I shook my head, my anger bubbling over. You don't get to swoop in after 5 years and play the good guy, Matt. You had your chance to be her father. You missed it. His face fell. He didn't argue. He just nodded, staring at the table. I stood up, tossing some cash on the counter. Stay out of my way, I warned. Because I swear to God, if you try to take her from me, I will fight you. And I won't lose. Matt didn't say anything as I walked out. But I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. Jessica's next move. By the time I got back to my brother's place, my phone was already blowing up with texts from Jessica. Jessica, Matt told me you met. Please come home so we can talk. Jessica, we need to figure this out together. Jessica, I don't want to lose you. I don't want to lose Emma's family. I ignored all of them. Then, one final message came through. Jessica, if you don't come back, I'm telling Emma the truth. I stopped breathing. She wouldn't. She couldn't. I called her immediately. She picked up on the first ring. Are you serious right now? I snapped. She sniffled. I don't know what else to do. She keeps asking why you're not home. I don't know what to tell her. My grip tightened on the phone. You tell her that Daddy is busy. That's it. Jessica let out a shaky breath. I don't want to lie to her anymore. I clenched my jaw. Oh, now you don't want to lie. Silence. I took a deep breath, forcing my anger down. Listen to me, Jessica. If you tell Emma now, before I have a chance to figure this out, you will ruin her. Do you understand me? She hesitated. I pressed on. You don't do anything until I say so. If you do, I swear to God, I will make sure you regret it. Jessica let out a quiet sob. Okay. I hung up before she could say anything else. My hands were shaking. Everything was spinning out of control. And I had no idea how to stop it. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma's face, the way she hugged me, the way she called me daddy, the way she trusted me without question. And now, that trust was about to be shattered. By morning, I had made my decision. I couldn't disappear. No matter how much I hated Jessica, no matter how much I wanted to burn everything down and walk away, I couldn't do that to Emma. But I also couldn't stay in that house. So I went back, not to fix things with Jessica, but to take control of the situation. The final conversation. When I walked through the door, Jessica was waiting for me. Her eyes were red and puffy, her hands twisting together nervously. Thank you for coming back, she whispered. I ignored her and walked straight past her to Emma's room. She was sitting on the floor, playing with her dolls. The second she saw me, her face lit up. Daddy, she squealed, running into my arms. I lifted her up and held her tight. Hey, kiddo. She pulled back, pouting. You were gone forever. I forced a smile. I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry. She huffed. Mommy was sad. She cried a lot. I glanced toward the doorway. Jessica was standing there, watching us, her arms wrapped around herself. I set Emma down gently. Hey, can you do me a favor? Go pack a little bag. We're gonna have a sleepover at Uncle Ryan's, okay? Her face lit up. Really? Really? She ran off, excited, while I turned back to Jessica. "You're taking her?" she asked, her voice shaking. I nodded. "For a few days. I need time to figure out what happens next. And I need you to keep your mouth shut about the truth until I decide how to handle this." Jessica's lower lip trembled. "You can't just take her away." "Watch me," I said coldly. She stepped closer. "Please, don't do this." I clenched my jaw. "You already did this, Jessica. This is just me cleaning up your mess." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to let her destroy Emma's world the way she destroyed mine. No matter what happened next, I was going to be the one to tell Emma the truth. On my terms. And if Matt or Jessica tried to take that from me, they were going to regret it. That I packed a bag, grabbed Emma's favorite stuffed animal, and walked her out to the car. Jessica stood in the doorway, watching us leave like a ghost of the life we once had. She didn't say anything. Maybe she knew better. Maybe she had finally realized that I wasn't playing her game anymore. Emma chattered excitedly the whole drive to my brother's house, completely unaware that her world was hanging by a thread. When we got there, I set her up in the guest room with her coloring books and sat down with Ryan in the kitchen. "All right," he said, cracking open a beer. "What's the plan?" I let out a slow breath. "I tell Emma the truth." His eyebrows shot up. "You sure?" I nodded. "Not the whole thing." "Not yet. But I need to start. I can't let her grow up thinking I abandoned her when I didn't." Ryan took a sip, considering. "How do you even say that to a 5-year-old?" I swallowed hard. "I don't know. But I'm about to find out." The hardest conversation of my life. That night, after Emma had settled in, I sat beside her on the bed. "Hey, sweetheart," I said softly. "Can we talk for a minute?" She looked up from her coloring book, nodding. "Okay." I took a deep breath. "You know how much I love you, right?" She giggled. "Silly. Of course you do." I smiled, but my chest felt tight. "Good. Because I need to tell you something important." She set her crayons down, watching me curiously. I hesitated. My hands were shaking. But I had to do this. "Sweetheart, families come in all different ways," I started carefully. "Sometimes, daddies and mommies aren't together forever. And sometimes, people find out things that change their lives." She tilted her head. "Like what?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "The truth is, I'm not the daddy that made you with mommy. But I am the daddy who's been here for you every single day since you were born. And that's never going to change." She blinked. "What do you mean?" I took her tiny hand in mine. "It means that I love you more than anything in this world, no matter what. It means that I will always be here for you, even if things change a little." Her little forehead scrunched up in confusion. "So, you're still my daddy?" I felt my eyes burn. "Always." She studied me for a second. Then she smiled and threw her arms around my neck. "I don't care," she whispered. "You're my best daddy." I held her tight, my chest aching. This little girl, the one I had raised, the one I had loved with every piece of me, still saw me as hers. No DNA test was ever going to change that. Epilogue, moving forward. Jessica called the next day, frantic. "You told her?" she cried. "Yes," I said. "On my terms. The way it should have been done." She let out a shaky breath. "And? How did she take it?" I glanced at Emma, who was currently making Ryan wear a tiara and pink feather boa. "She took it better than you deserve." Jessica sniffled. "So, what now?" I exhaled. "Now, we figure out what comes next. But one thing's for sure, this marriage is over." Silence. Then, softly, she said, "I know." And with that, I hung up. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know what the future would look like. But one thing was certain. No matter what happened next, Emma was still my daughter. And no one was ever going to take that away from me.
Goodbye.